Well, the thing that we're not thinking about, I think, is just how
payment processors, et cetera.
Exactly is how truly unstable the entire online ecosystem is, right? You mentioned payment processors. There's sort of the domain registration services. That's a big question. There are sort of CDN services. That's a big question mark that I have. If you get really far down the line and the tech companies feel extraordinarily powerful, do you get to a point where if you type in a website on a mobile browser, the browser won't actually resolve? Like, that's sort of the hallmark of a free and open internet, is that if you type in a website, you go to that website, do the browsers themselves start becoming agents of censorship?
You also have a VC firm, and you're actually getting in the fight right now by getting involved with Rumble. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, so we launched our VC firm in Cincinnati. I'd been in VC, the industry, for a few years. I'd always wanted to do something in my hometown. So we launched it as a Cincinnati-based firm in 2019. Myself, a partner, and a couple of our employees who are great. And we like, on the one hand, we're just a classic VC firm, right? We try to invest in really good companies and help them grow. One of the companies I'm most proud of that we invested in is a company called App Harvest, which is an agriculture technology company in Eastern Kentucky. Now has a close to $2 billion market cap. And when we invested, it was really just in its formative stages. So a lot of good stuff happening. But yeah, one of the companies I'm most proud that we got involved with was Rumble. And, I know you know a lot about Rumble, but the thinking there was actually, we were sort of looking at a lot of the alternative tech platforms in the wake of January the 6th, right? It's like, okay, this is pretty scary. The president of the United States just got booted off of social media. Maybe these companies are too powerful. Let's look at Gab. Let's look at Parler. Let's look at a lot of the companies that are out there that are actually providing something like free speech to people who want to live in the digital world. And, liked a lot of the companies that we looked at, couldn't quite get comfortable that they were actually robust enough technology to withstand, what eventually, the deplatforming incident that came against Parler that effectively shut the site down for a couple of months. But just kept on looking. And we finally met Chris, who's the CEO and the founder of Rumble, who I know you know well, and started like talking to Chris and thinking, okay, so first of all, their user metric numbers are incredible. They're growing at a really remarkable clip. They've never had an infusion of capital, so they've sort of done all of this growth organically. But also, Chris had built the platform, not to be like a conservative website or a liberal website, but just to be a true alternative website. Like, the technology was robust. We felt like, well, if AWS tries to deplatform this company, they're not going to be able to be successful because of the way that Chris had built the underlying technology. And so just eventually got really excited about what they were doing, made a big investment there, brought Peter Thiel along into the deal. He also made a big investment in the company. And now it's growing at a really amazing clip. And we think that this could be a true independent, apolitical alternative to big tech.
Right. So I don't want to say too much at the moment, but I am having dinner in Miami with Chris on Friday, so I'll leave that part there. But in essence, is the goal that you guys sort of want to replace AWS, that you guys would basically say, hey, we've got all of the infrastructure. Chris is an engineer. He's been building this thing for 10 years. Like, we've got the infrastructure so that you won't just be blown up like Parler. Because you're right, that was the moment where it was like everyone realized this thing just, the severity of the situation just went through the roof.
That's right. Yeah. More even than Trump being deplatformed, Parler being effectively kicked off the internet was really radicalizing, to me and to a lot of other people as well. Certainly one of the options, I'll put it this way, one of the options I think for Rumble is to become a long-term, apolitical, true free speech AWS, right? The sort of online web platform that's not going to deplatform you because you say things that the mob doesn't like. But one of the things I've learned working in the technology sector is you always try to have a good plan and you execute against it. But there are a lot of forks in the road. And I think Rumble, has 10 different pathways to the moon. Like, this is not a company that just has one real option to go after. And what I think actually there's always challenges with companies. And one of the challenges with Rumble that I think about is they have such a big market opportunity. They have so much they could do that I think focusing and picking the right strategic pathway is almost going to be the biggest challenge, because the company, again, they're just doing really well and they've got a lot of real upside.
Right. And not to do too much of a commercial here, but you guys had the Trump rally a couple days ago, live streamed on Rumble, over 500,000 people. I think Biden's speech yesterday or the day before, 18,000 people on YouTube. So something good's going on over there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 500,000 people, and being able to handle that amount of traffic as a new company is not easy. So we were really pleased with it.
Yeah. So as this ecosystem kind of comes together, are there other pieces that you think we need to be thinking about that maybe we're not thinking about?
Well, the thing that we're not thinking about, I think, is just how
payment processors, et cetera.
Exactly, is how truly unstable the entire online ecosystem is. Right. You mentioned payment processors. There's sort of the domain registration services. That's a big question. There are sort of CDN services. That's a big question mark that I have. If you get really far down the line and the tech companies feel extraordinarily powerful, do you get to a point where if you type in a website on a mobile browser, the browser won't actually resolve? Like, that's sort of the hallmark of a free and open internet, is that if you type in a website, you go to that website, do the browsers themselves start becoming agents of censorship? So what's crazy about the internet, is that there are probably 40 or 50 really critical layers that make it work, from sort of payments processing, front end services, all the way down to the back end stuff that 99% of people don't see or care about. But at each level, there are only a few companies that actually control things, right? And so it's not inconceivable that you have an internet where people can't have access to it if they're not sufficiently left wing. That's sort of a big concern that I have. And I think that there are a lot of good folks, a lot of good firms that are working on ensuring there are alternatives that are truly committed to free speech. So I'm somewhat optimistic that some of these alternatives are coming online, but I do in some ways see this as like a race against the future, because the left is, as you know, is not becoming less crazy. It's actually becoming more crazy. And, once they control the information, they really control the way all of us think. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Is that part of the problem right there, that there's just sort of an asymmetry of who likes to use power? I've been talking about that a lot on the show, just that we don't really want to use power. Even in this conversation, it's like, competition, government. It's like we're sort of okay with competing ideas being out there, where when they have the power, we know what they do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People always ask me the difference between left and right. Is it small government, big government, social conservative, progressive, what have you? And I always say, look, the big difference between the left and the right is the left loves to use power and the right is terrified of using power. And, my friend Richard Hanania, who's a really interesting thinker on this, he says the left loves to use power because they actually care about politics more. Like, you look at polling and the right just doesn't care as much about politics as the left does. I think, unfortunately, we're in an environment where we have to get over it, because if we're not willing to use power to push back against the left, I think that power is going to come for us. It's going to come for our livelihoods. It's going to come for our families. It's going to come eventually, and already started coming, for our very ability to speak and to think for ourselves. And so I agree, the left has a basic instinctive advantage because they love to use power, but we're just going to have to get over it, or we're going to find ourselves without, really a real republic anymore.
Yeah. Do you see any sort of version of any of this ecosystem where there has to be some regulations around speech? This is where the gatekeeping conversation always comes in. Are you going to let Antifa coordinate on there on one side versus neo-Nazis on another side, or something like that?
Obviously there's some regulation in every sphere. And I tend to think that, look, we've had a First Amendment in our country for 245 years, and it's worked pretty well. And the basic outline of the First Amendment is that you're allowed to speak your mind. You're allowed to say the things that you want to say, so long as you effectively don't incite violence against other people, right? There are very narrow limits on what you're allowed to say, but there are some limits. And I think that's fine. And I think that should be the hallmark to how we think about the regulation of speech, is we should be open to hearing a debate, so long as it doesn't run afoul of the basic principles of the First Amendment. Now, importantly, like this doesn't, I think a lot of folks on the left like to retreat and say, well, are you not allowed to sort of regulate a school curriculum, for example? If you don't want to teach 4-year-olds or 8-year-olds that they should hate America and that America is a fundamentally white supremacist country, is that like a violation of the First Amendment? I think no, of course it isn't, right? We've long understood that the way we treat kids is different from the way we treat adults. And the purpose of our schools is to form people, form young minds for future leadership and future citizenship. So I think the First Amendment doesn't apply everywhere, right? It applies to a 19-year-old much differently than it applies to a 3-year-old. But I think that should be our guiding principle.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.